Hey, welcome back to the channel and another short story of exactly 1,000 words inspired by a piece of artwork written on the spot. And this is going to be somewhat of a milestone episode because it's episode 104. That means a story a week for 2 years. And it also means I'm going to be halting this project for now, perhaps indefinitely, perhaps not. I will get more into why at the end of the video. But if you do find these videos useful, I know that they get some views, please let me know in the comments. That will probably lead me to doing these more often than not or sooner than not. But regardless, I'm going to take a bit of a break. So like I said, check out the end of the video, or hopefully you watch the entire video if you want to hear about why. Which leads us to the music I listened to while composing this story, and that is the Road soundtrack by Warren Ellis and Nick Cave, for really the only reason that I enjoy that soundtrack. I love their work, and there's a road in it, right? It kind of seemed thematically like it fit, and the story, in fact, is, I guess you could say, somewhat of a metaphor for this stopping point. So why don't you turn on those haunting post-apocalyptic tunes, and let's check out this week's artwork. This week's artwork is titled Arizona Stranger. It's by an illustrator and concept artist named Pavel Zayats from Krakow, Poland. This one, as noted by the artist, is very cinematic, which is why I was drawn to it, obviously. I love an image that tells a story, and this one definitely does. Let us take a closer look. So not in the foreground, but in the background, we have a young man leaning against a beat-up car. Looks like he has a cigarette between his fingers, and he's peering down this road. It looks as if it's sunset, or maybe dawn, I'm not quite sure. There's a bunch of electrical poles leading all the way down that highway. And in the foreground, we have just a bunch of rocks and shrubs, weeds, etc., etc. It looks like he's got some blood on the back window as well. This one opens up many possibilities. Could be a reflective piece. We shall see. But Pavel, thank you so much for this artwork. It is very inspiring. All right, well, let's see what I come up with. He didn't know much about where he was, other than it was dry and hot, and full of electrical poles tethered by sagging lines, marching alongside an endless road. A highway where he'd run out of gas and out of ideas, so he thought he'd just wait a while until something came for him, or he for it. He looked down that endless road with a head full of ghosts, because that's all he'd left behind. People, places, tastes, smells. Not many sounds for some reason. The only sounds here were the stretch in his denim and the gravel hiss of his shoe soles when he shifted his feet on the blacktop when his legs got tired, or rummaged around his pocket for something. That something was usually a $2 Zippo to ignite his dwindling collection of smokes, the last one of which was crimped between his fingers, smoldering. His stance became tiresome once again, so he adjusted his feet once again, his backside leaning against the car he hadn't bothered to learn the model of, though all he had to do was check around back, where all cars proudly brandished their namesakes in bold silver. Sure, it could have come off in the chase through the town with the storybook gabled houses, where he'd fishtailed his way down Main Street, as onlookers leaped to safety, losing their ice creams they just procured from the little shack with a vanilla swirl for a roof, and he all the while unable to see his pursuer in the rear view because the back window was webbed with a bullet hole for a bullseye that had been the passage for a bloodletting and brainletting projectile, which had ended a man who had tried to strangle him from the back seat and failed. Sure, but he didn't care much for cars anyway. Not much for names either. Hell, he only remembered his own due to the ghosts in his head screaming it all the time. He pinched the bridge of his nose, got a whiff of that sweet tobacco, and couldn't resist a drag. He held it in, wondering why any other kind of smoke would choke him up, set him to hacking his lungs out, but the kind stored up in these little white paper sticks held him like a warm blanket. If he didn't have to breathe, he would have held it in forever. Maybe that was a sign he was done with living. Or living was done with him. No gas in the nameless car to keep the nameless man going compounded that portent. He took another drag, found his cigarette had gone cold, so fished for that Zippo again. He discovered something else. Metal, sure. Produce fire, sure. Fit snugly in the hand, sure. But not what he was looking for. Still, he took it out, weighed it in his hand, checked the cylinder, held it up to his eye and peered through each and every chamber to see the sunset landscape of dirt and rock and shrub captured in circular glory. He didn't look away, trapped the horizon and everything above and below in an ecosystem of his choosing, one so small he could rest it on the tip of his finger if he could pluck it free. Too bad he couldn't. He channeled his boyhood dreams of one day pitching ball in the majors and tossed the revolver into the weeds and the thoughts of turning it on himself along with it. He wasn't a cliche. He wasn't going to sit here and ponder bringing about his own demise that would conclude with a slideshow of melancholy faces weeping over a boy that could have been something. His dad always said he was something. His mom too. Both with a shake of their heads, eyes downcast because they couldn't believe what they'd brought into this world. Something, he said. The word tasted like blood from the inside of a cheek scored by wisdom teeth. Looked like the blood caught in the web of a nameless car's back window, as it opened in front of his eyes like a grasping hand, then a closing hand, then nothing at all but the view of slumbering hills. He flicked the Zippo open, sparked the tinder, placed what was left of his last smoke through the flame, and inhaled. Down the endless road something glimmered on the last ray of sun before it ducked behind the hills. He didn't know much about where he was, what he'd driven, or where he'd go, but he did know what a windshield looked like angled to the sky just right to catch its beauty, and what a beauty it was. His tongue too dry to douse the cigarette, he snuffed it with a pinch and put it in his back pocket, maybe a half an inch left to the filter. Teeth looking clean in the side mirror was no surprise on account of him not having had a single bite in days. His hair, though, groomed proper, despite many nights sleeping against a cracked leather headrest, twisted more ways than a pretzel was a surprise. His smile looked genuine enough. The eyes were what made it so, corners trampled by crows. Shirt dusted but not stained, pants weathered smooth. He looked to where he'd thrown the revolver and his thoughts. Empty or not, it could do some convincing if his smile didn't. His thoughts had even less utility, so he decided he could do without both and let them lie. A shed rattler skin tumbled by like it was autumn. He turned his head to spit, but came up empty, just like the cylinder. Something, he said, before heading down the endless road toward what was coming for him, ghosts skulking through his gray matter folds in the throes of conversation. They said his name. They said other things too. But he didn't listen, because listening had never got him nowhere, and he had somewhere to be, something to do. Welcome to the interviewer. I'm so glad you made it. This is where I talk about my final thoughts, what I liked, what I didn't like, maybe what I learned, except this one's going to be different because there's no words on the screen, right? That is because I'm going to let this one breathe. I'm going to let it sit in your subconscious. I'm going to let you come to the conclusion of what the story meant, because I didn't want this last story to be something that I explained ad nauseum what my entire thought process was. Just know that there's definitely some metaphor there for where we are in this project, or where I am in this project. So I will leave that up to you to interpret. But if you'd like to chat with me about it, please join my Discord. There's a link down below. You can reach me most of the time. But speaking of a fitting end, let's talk a little bit about this project. So I know a lot of you on this channel discovered this later. This is episode 104, and I've never done something this long, honestly, this consistently, I should say. And if you never caught the first video, I'll give you an explanation of what the entire point of this thing was, right? It was to get myself to write more, to get myself to try different genres, try different techniques, and I believe I have achieved that. I've learned a tremendous amount with this project. I've been able to dabble in different voices, different writing styles, and obviously, like I said, different genres, and it's been very illuminating, to say the least. If you are not writing short stories, I highly recommend you do it. But really, I felt that I've kind of gone as far as I could go with this project. I've explored nearly every single genre I can think of, or at least every genre that appeals to me. And now I really want to spend more time on my longer form work and injecting what I have learned into that. I have a bit of a time management problem, but don't we all? And I feel like as much fun as these videos are doing, they do take a lot of work. And so I would like to take that creative energy into my longer form stuff, like I said. because I have a lot of stories I want to tell. But like I said earlier in the video, this does not mark the end of this series. I feel like it's going to be far less frequent, of course. I will get to it sooner. If those of you out there who do, like I said, find a lot of value in this and would love me to continue, please let me know in the comments, because that will probably dictate when the next one of these comes. But I have thoroughly enjoyed doing this. I've met a lot of great people who are on the Discord. So if you're not there yet, why don't you join it? And it's definitely made me become a better writer. At least I think so. But there is a silver lining. I'm going to release all of these stories in a collection, a 2-volume collection comprising year 1 and year 2. And we'll see. Maybe I'll get inspired by artwork or get a bug and want to continue these yet again. I just think right now I need to focus on some other stuff. So I have volume 1 in my hands already from the editor. I just need to go through it, clean up some stuff, add some little other things that I wanted to add in there, kind of just behind the scenes commentary that weren't in the manuscript that I sent to the editor. But I would look for volume 1 coming out relatively soon. And I've also hit another milestone, 500 subscribers, which is amazing. It gives me access to the community post, so I don't need to make a video for every little thing like a book poll. So thank you again for the support. Thanks for joining me on this long ride of 2 years with a story every single week. I hope they have brought some value to your writing, or if you're not a writer, that you've at least enjoyed some of these stories I've created. And like all the others, I hope you enjoyed this last one. So keep reading, keep writing, and well, I guess I'll see you down the road sometime. Thanks. Bye. If you'd like to read the story in its non-video format, check the link in the description. I didn't edit anything else, promise. Thanks again.